Welcome to a new edition of If I Ever Live to Be. Yes, your eyes do not deceive you. We're in the Hammerhead studio. I am with Julie Bohata, my friend. So we're going to intro Julie, but we are in a new space, and who you cannot see is Logan Lewis, who's producing in the background. But Julie and I wanted to be in person because we live like right down the street from one another. And we're really good friends. And it was like, when we did
Exactly.
this,
Favorite people.
oh, thank you. You're one of mine. We knew we wanted to be in person. So welcome to the podcast, Julie, and
Thank
to
you.
Logan's studio.
Thank you.
So you are senior ambassador of Few Atlanta, executive assistant extraordinaire. You are also now an author of Power of Yes,
Exciting.
which is, how many women's stories are in here? 17?
18.
18.
17 including myself.
Okay. And it's compilation. Each woman has a chapter, and this was published by Few Publishing,
Exactly.
which regular listeners of the show are very familiar with. Few and Few Atlanta and Kimberly Joy, I've mentioned lots of times. I've mentioned Nancy Major a lot of times as well. So, and even Buffy, who is our chapter president of the Atlanta location. So the Atlanta chapter. It all goes together. So, you know what? That kind of feels like a really good place to start is how we met, which is through Matt and Buffy Payne and Outer Circle, which is their nonprofit really focused on veterans, first responders, and their families, kind of working through that PTSD career transition phase. And that is how we met. And that was before Few, like right before Few got its kickoff. So
about 3 years ago almost.
Yeah. So we met there, and I instantly fell in love with you.
I know. Me too. It's like we've known each other forever.
We really did. We hit it off, and we were just like instant friends. And then the first time Kimberly Joy came to Atlanta, it was for a Few conference.
Yes.
Was it leadership?
It was. I think that was the 3-day leadership that we had, that first one.
Yeah. And we sat together.
Yes.
Side by side.
Amazing.
Cried a whole lot, I felt like.
It was very emotional.
Yeah.
Those conferences emotionally drain.
They really are.
Amazing.
You were like so tired after every single one. We just had one this time last week. Yeah, 2 days worth. And even still, it's like God continues. We're like onions, and he just continues to like pull back a layer. And he's like, actually, we've got more there. So where would you like to go with that, Julie? So we can dive into your story, which I would love to do. And I'm answering my own question here because I kind of teed it up before we hit the record button. I was reading your story, and there were so many, like I knew a little bit of your story, like the birth of your son, Ricky, and you and your husband had been married 30.
Well, we are married 33 years, but we were married 12 years.
So, okay.
We decided.
So you're going on 33 years of marriage. You were married for 12 years before Ricky came along. So I knew part of that story. But I was reading your chapter in The Power of Yes, and there was so much in there that I did not know. And I was just sitting there reading the story going, oh my goodness, this sweet, precious woman has been through so much. And that is just always so fascinating to me. I'm always fascinated because we all have stories. So many people go through difficult things in life, and some take that and they become better, and they're bound and determined to never repeat the situations that they were previously in.
Exactly.
And then others almost, for lack of a better term, succumb to that.
Right.
So I'd love to just kind of tee you up in that way, share whatever of your story that you would like to share, but where in that story you came to, I don't want to do this anymore, and kind of just allowed God to come in and be like, yeah, well, that's because this is not the purpose that I have for you.
Exactly. So The Power of Yes, it is amazing. 18 authors, 18 women, they all said yes to God. So many stories are so compelling and emotional. I felt like mine was not as good as theirs, but Kimberly Joy and Buffy was like, don't compare yourself to others.
Yeah.
But my story took a different turn because I said yes to having a child, and also yes to God, for that. But so I don't want to tell the whole story because I want people to
Go get
be
the
able to go
book.
get the book, and you can get it on Amazon. Or connect with me and I'll be able to give you a copy as well, get you one. But so my mom was, well, first of all, I was born and raised in Atlanta. So I'm a
Whoop, whoop.
Georgia peach, just like you, girl. And but she was 16. And my grandparents were prominent Atlanta business people.
Okay.
So they wanted her to get an abortion. And so God saved me while I was actually in my mom's belly because she decided, my mom, not to go through with
Yeah.
abortion, obviously, because I'm sitting here. But, that meant that obviously, she had to deal with that trauma of trying to tell my grandparents, what she was going to do. So
Yeah.
she did have me. And so once she had me, I grew up or whatever. And my dad actually married my mom, but I didn't know too much from my childhood, except for I knew that they got divorced whenever I was 4 years old. And then my mom remarried. And then I was at the age of 14 and 16 whenever she had other children. And I'm like, I've been this only child. I'm
For all this
14.
time. Yeah.
She's only 32. And people started thinking that they were my kids.
Mm.
And I hated that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because back then, I mean, it's like, back in the 1900s, as Big Rich says, give a plug to him. But in all seriousness, you don't people have kids, that early of age, but it struck me. I mean, I hadn't even delved in things to have children,
Yeah.
and it made me upset as well.
That
So
people
anyway,
would think that about you. Yeah.
exactly, so I'm like, "No," and then, of course, like I said, at age 16, she had another one, and I'm like, "Ah, really?" So I did move back and forth with my grandparents. I decided to move out, because I didn't wanna deal with that, move back and forth with my grandparents, but anyway, so I was a rebellious teen, because of that. I have always been a Christian. My mom raised me as a Christian. I went to church whenever I was younger, but once that happened, I started rebelling. I
Yeah.
did stopped going to church, which was probably not a good thing because I delved into some things that, a lot of teenagers do,
Yeah.
that I had a near death experience. I even contemplated suicide. And I did not even think about that until I started writing my story. And I guess God brought that back up. It's like, I repelled that, or, I guess kept it within. And, but he saved me there too. God did, and once that happened, I'm like, I said, I really need to go back to church. But then I didn't because I thought that I wasn't good enough because I was still delving into all this, bad things. But anyway, so again, I don't want to tell too much of my story because, I want people to read it.
Yeah.
But I do want to bring up the fact that I did finally end up meeting a very good man, Richard, and he was amazing, but we really didn't talk about having children. And I started thinking, well, I don't want to have children. And then 3 years into our marriage, he's like, we should start thinking about having kids. And I'm like, no, 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 no. So, my reason of not wanting to have children. So that went on about every year because we were dinks. That is dual income,
No
no
kids.
kids.
Yes.
And I loved it. I've been an executive assistant for ever since I graduated from high school. I do not have a college degree. I am self-taught myself being an
College
assistant.
of life,
I
baby.
was going to say, and all those, all of my leaders, they taught me, and
Yeah.
every place that I was at, which is not many, I stayed there for years. I was legal assistant for 10 years. I loved that. So, but anyway, getting back to finally deciding to have children. So it was 12 years. Richard's like, okay, you're in yours late. You're getting up there
Yeah, because I mean
in
as women,
age.
we fight against that because
That
you were
clock.
considered high risk
Yes.
at that time. Yes.
Clock was ticking. And he's like, we're either going to have kids. And he didn't say the divorce word, but we're going to have to change. And that's basically what he said. And I knew that. So I prayed to God. I'm like, God, what am I supposed to do? And he actually said, you are going to have a son. Just do it.
Very nice.
So we did.
Love that. Love that you said, that you said yes to God, but that you even pause to ask him the question. I feel like, sometimes we get so caught up on that of you can ask God questions. You can let him know, I don't understand this, or I don't know
Mhm.
what you want me to do, or this is the way I'm feeling. I feel like we kind of, for lack of a better word, we poo poo that. But as I've gotten older and examining the book of Job, Job told God how he felt.
Mhm.
He was like, I don't like this. I don't agree with this. I don't
Exactly.
understand this. The point was he went to God about it. And I think that's all God is asking us to do in those circumstances. He's like, bring me that disappointment or the difficulty or the non understanding. I mean, where did we come up with this idea that we're supposed to know,
I know.
know all the things?
I know.
So,
But it was amazing. We did have, because Richard wanted to have a son to bear his name.
of
He wanted a
course, yeah,
junior, and so
understand that.
that's what we had. So Psalms 138:8 is my verse there because he's my only son. So that's one. He was born in room 3. That's 3. He was 8 pounds, 8 ounces. So that's what God told me. And so I decided to, and it's the best thing ever. I'm telling people out there, if you really seriously are thinking, about having a child, or if you can't, go adopt, because
Yeah,
it's the best thing. I would have probably had at least one more, but we were blessed to be able to, grow up with. I've known Buffy for almost 21 years, and her son is 21, and so Ricky and Connor were able to grow up together.
yeah.
So he's my like adopted son.
And they're both such great kids.
They are, they really are.
I've had the opportunity to spend some time around both of them,
Mhm.
and they're both godly gentlemen
They
growing
are
up to
very
be.
they didn't go through the things that we went through. In other words, the things that I
Yeah.
show in my book and things like that, I was very thankful that, he did not experience some of the rebellious things that I did as a child.
What I'd love to it's interesting. I do these podcasts and I don't necessarily like plan who's going to be on what
Mhm.
day. And more often than not, there's a theme that goes with each day. And so this is going to tie back into a question I wrote down that I want to ask you, but I just recorded. So depending on like when we release all these, right? I record several at one time. Brandon Smith came on the show and we got to the end of the podcast and I
Mhm.
asked the question I always ask. And he made this comment that he feels like he is resetting his family tree
That's
due to the experiences of his childhood. And the whole concept was like his children are not going to have to face all the things that he
Mhm.
did.
Mhm.
And I feel like that's almost one of those things that it takes some years, it takes some time before you can kind of look back and see, okay, I see where this is going. And I feel like that's part of your story that even though those were some things that you experienced, the way, you really went back to God and turned things
Yes,
around, Ricky doesn't have to experience that.
exactly, exactly.
So when did you know, like, when did your mom tell you, "Hey, my parents actually wanted me to get an abortion?"
Ugh,
Do you know,
that's,
like, how old you were?
um You know what? I really don't. It was probably it may have been whenever I moved back in with my grandparents because she was like, "Well, it's not greener, the grass is not greener on
Oh,
the other side. Let me explain what actually happened." And then I'm like, "Do I really want to go live with them or not?" You know what? My grandparents were wonderful. I mean, once I did obviously come into the world, they loved me
of course. Right, right, right.
unconditionally. It's just that, like I said, they were prominent people, in the Atlanta community. And for them to have a young child, or that was only 16 having being pregnant, their
Yeah,
only child. It was an embarrassment supposedly, I guess. But yes, I think that that's when.
yeah.
So, and my mom unfortunately passed away whenever she was only 50. So, unfortunately she was not able to meet Ricky, but I know that she's up
Mm,
there smiling down and then her other children, two half I call them my half brother and half sister, but my sister Ashley, we have We actually have a really good relationship now. For the past 2 years, we have gotten back in touch, and she has 2 daughters, and then those 2 daughters have grandbaby or she has grandbabies from them. So
Wow.
they're actually a really nice family, so they're blessed,
Yeah.
with that, so
I was just curious of, where you felt like that played into, because I know you mentioned you had a period of time where you contemplated ending your life, and I'm just thinking back that really how selfishly thankful
Mhm,
that even I am of just that your mom decided to bring you into this world
mhm.
and that you decided to stay in it.
And that's true. And it was a very stupid reason for doing it. So, but God intervened because
Yeah.
I went into a room and I prayed and prayed and prayed. As soon as I got done with my prayer, it's like a peace went over me. And it was like, no, you got to stay here. You have
Yeah.
a lot more to do.
Exactly. Well, and it's just that we can't see that, right?
Hmm.
That is just both the difficulty and the encouragement. I
Hmm.
think of that moment is that you can't see what's on the other side of that. You don't. I think when we're sitting in it in that moment, we think, oh, this can only get worse. But no, it could actually get better if you
Hmm.
just see it through.
Yes. And I actually was only 18. I just wanted to bring that up as well
Yeah.
because I don't want people thinking that it was actually sometime recent. I was in that
When you
dark
were young.
period
Yeah.
in the teenage dark rebellious
Yeah.
period. So, but
And there's a lot going on. I think as kids, there's so much change going on
there
that time in our lives. And I'm talking like outside of hormones because there's that too. But
yeah.
like you got that, you got that going on, which by the way,
Something you don't have to deal with.
I like for women that continues to change. But like there's that going on, school and everything that you kind of face there of friendships beginning and ending. But also like you were going through a lot in your own family, a
Mhm.
lot of change, a lot of back and forth. Because your father also died.
No, he actually is still living.
Okay, I'm sorry. Gentleman, your mom remarried.
Oh, yes, I apologize. So, getting back to that, the man that my mom married
Yeah,
that had these children, he ended up getting, he was an alcoholic. So, he ended up getting kicked in the head
got in
because of
like
a
a
bar
fight.
fight, and he ended up dying on
That's
Christmas
rough.
Day.
That's hard.
Yes, because those kids, her kids, they were only 3 and 5 at the time.
Wow.
So and I was 19. So I ended up taking on that motherly role in
Yeah,
order to help my own mom because she was legally blind and she could not drive, she could not get the places, and things like that. So that's basically for several years I had before I met Richard, I was really taking on, the motherly role of helping her
yeah.
raise her children. So,
Even that can be hard. That's kind of a role that you're not really supposed to have to carry at
mhm.
that age. And in fact, you and your father, you're actually still pretty close
Yes.
today.
Oh,
He's
God.
still alive and you're pretty close.
Yes, he lives in Mableton, not too far away, so, yes, I love him. We, had some good times back then because I lived with him for a bit too. Throughout my journey, I actually went to, like, a different high school every year because it seems like I was either with my grandparents, my mom, and then my dad, but he used to work for Warner Brothers and met some amazing '80s bands and Van
Yeah.
Halen and all these, rock stars. Some of them are no longer here, but yes, and he's married to an amazing woman named Ruth, my stepmom, so we get along really well.
I love that.
And I do have 2 other brothers. I have 2 half brothers too, so it's like I have from my dad, too, so it's just funny.
Yeah. Well, and again, even when I was reading this story, I'm like, because we are so close, and I feel like I know you so well. And I was reading the story, I'm like, gosh, we got more in common than I thought because
Yes.
I, I too lost my mom.
Yes. Mhm.
She was older than your mom,
But
but
not
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 by much. It was a year that I turned 30. My bad joke is that I'm the only proof that my parents were ever together because I don't have any memory of them being together. Now, there are home videos of us all three being together. There are wedding albums, but
Mhm.
I do not have any memory of living with my parents under the same roof.
Hmm.
All, as far back as I can remember, they've always been separated. So I was really young too. I don't know if I was 3 or 4 or something like that, but I was
Mhm.
really young. Um, and all the way like, same thing, alcoholism on my mom's side, so I was like, "Wow, we have
It is an
so much in
illness.
common." Yeah,
I
it
mean, it
is.
is. So, because my grandparents, both of my grandparents were actually alcoholics, and I personally could have been. I mean, I cannot consider myself an alcoholic because I don't drink, but there was a time, which I do tell in my story, where I did drink too much at a bar and
Yeah.
I drove. It was the first time I've ever driven drunk, and I prayed to God to get me to where I needed to be and
Mhm.
not kill somebody. And thankfully, I was able to pull into my the job that I was working at the parking lot, and thankfully, it was a Sunday and nobody was there, and he got me there. God got me there and
Yeah.
saved me. After that, obviously never drove drunk again, never did anything. So I love our Paulding County Sheriff's offices, so don't come get me. So but that was back then in Atlanta. But it is. It was a learning experience,
Yeah.
and I would never, ever do that again, and I would tell that story, so and then I only drink occasionally, I don't even like to drink, but because I was surrounded by so many
Yeah.
alcoholics.
Yeah.
My mom was not an alcoholic though, which is strange. Not strange, but she just was not. She was majorly depressed, but not an alcoholic.
Mm.
So,
So what would you say is that piece of resiliency? Like, why did Julie choose to turn right instead of turning left?
hmm,
Like, going on that different path versus down the same road that would have been really so easy, right,
mhm,
to go down.
yep.
It's hard kinda bucking the system.
I know. Well, it had to be all God. I mean, He puts His Holy Spirit in you and His peace in you, and you turn around and you do what He says. And it's like, okay, God, I see you, I hear you. That's not the path that I need to be on. And
Mhm.
this, like I said, all this happened before I even met Richard,
Oh,
my husband. And I didn't realize, and I still was not going to church regularly back, then I was in my younger 20s whenever all this was going on. So, but I still believed in God. I still consider myself a Christian, but I was still delving into things that I did not feel like I deserved or was good enough to go
yeah.
back into church because I thought and now I know that back
Mm.
then I should have just gone, but maybe I wouldn't be where I am today. So, but now is different.
For sure. I mean, he uses there's, that song, "There's
The
no
baby steps.
waste," and "There's no waste at the altar." I mean, he
Exactly.
uses each of those pieces. Yeah, and I think that, speaks to the proximity too of he tells us if we draw close to him, he will
Mhm.
draw close to us, and I feel like that sentiment, we almost don't look at it in the reverse, but, like, who you hang around is who you're gonna become most like. So if you're
Exactly. That's why I
hanging
hang out with
around
you.
thank you very much. That made my day. We can no, I'm just messing. No, I I appreciate that very much. That means a lot
Yeah, seriously.
that I would be one of those people
I
that
know.
you would wanna
There's
hang out
so
with.
many. We have so many women. And Buffy, she has been my rock, to mentor. Like
Yeah.
I said, I've known her
Yes.
for almost 21 years, but I've been working for her and her husband, Matt, for a little over 5 years now. And I've grown even since over 5 years from now. And I started going to Hope Church in Dallas about I wanna say almost 3 years ago, which is their home church, and
Yeah.
love it so much, and my spiritual in fact, I really would love to get rebaptized, or should I say baptized
Yeah.
again,
Yeah.
because
Because you were young.
I was,
Yeah.
and just to affirm my
Mhm.
faith,
Mhm.
and, so that is one goal. Pastor Jordan, I've already talked to him about that, and I would love to do that just because, I mean, I feel called to do that just to
Let
show
me know
God.
when that happens because we're gonna be there in
Oh,
the front
yeah.
row with a banner hooting and hollering.
So, but
That's a good point, though, and I would also say, like, that's a good just reminder of, like, check on the rocks in your life because I even remember, I definitely wanna get into few a little bit,
Mhm.
but we were talking about how we just had a few conference
Yes.
and, we're in there crying and
I
releasing a
know.
bunch of stuff, but I looked at Buffy and I was like, "I hope, that you're such a rock for us," but the rock, if you think of the person you always go to, that rock often sometimes it's like, who's their rock?
Exactly. In fact, Kimberly, she and even like the encourager, she
Yes.
had sent out something on Facebook, Kimberly Joy, and who is the founder of Few, and she said, "Are there any encouragers out there? Let me know." And I'm thinking, well, why is she doing this? But she had
Yeah,
a
yeah,
reason. There were several of us, all of us included, and we were like, we are. Why?
yeah.
And she says, "I'll tell you a reason." Well, the encouragers also need to be encouraged,
Yes. Yeah.
and she also talked about how she wanted to pray for everybody. She had asked that, and just like Buffy and everybody always does that. And then somebody commented, "Well, I would love this to be prayed, but how can we pray for you?" Speaking about Kimberly.
Yeah.
So it's such a blessing to be, surrounded by so many empowering women that are women of God, daughters of God, and that encourage you, uplift you. You can cry with them, obviously, like we do. And, you learn
Safe and
so much.
sacred.
I know it is
We're
safe and
allowed to
sacred.
spill some beans.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and that's our tribe, and that's what it is. The Fellowship of Extraordinary Women.
Yeah.
That's our tribe. So
Well, I love it, and I would love to even go a little bit deeper into that because I feel like, just in general, that can be hard to find.
it is very hard to find. So, and we definitely have, and we found it, or Buffy found it first about whenever she met Nancy Major, because we were
Yeah.
in a different organization about maybe 4 years ago, something like that. And we needed a speaker to come
Yes.
speak at one of our conferences. And she met Nancy Major and had her come speak. And then Nancy introduced her to Kimberly. And then, of course, we all got introduced. So I'll have to tell the story briefly. They had a conference, a few conference that was about saying yes. And this was about
Mm.
4 years ago. I do not
Is that
like
when you went to Wisconsin? Okay.
I do not like flying.
I was not invited. No, I'm just messing. I don't
You
even think we knew each other yet.
yeah, or you would have been there too.
Yeah, yeah, we didn't know each other yet.
So so my husband works for Delta, but I do not like flying. He can travel me all over the world, but I have this fear of flying. So Buffy comes over one day. She's like, "Julie, I'm going to Wisconsin. I want you to come with me." And I said, "Wait," I said, "Isn't Wisconsin like way up there?" I said, "How are we getting there?" She goes, "We're
Okay,
flying."
yeah,
I
yeah.
said, "No."
I
And
love
that's
it.
all I said, and she goes, "Julie, you need to say yes. It's a yes conference."
Mm.
And I said, "No." But I finally gave in, and I was like, and it was such an important. Now, granted, I was nervous on the plane, but I did make it. Obviously, I'm here, and it wasn't bad. And obviously, we flew on Delta, which is, but it was
Logan thirds it.
amazing. It was amazing because you got into the meeting. That was our first experience meeting all these empowering women, leaders out there, retirees. Your professionals, your you know people that everybody is a leader. You don't have to be an executive CEO. You are a leader. We're leaders. There were so many women out there, and I really enjoyed it. And I'm really glad I went. And actually, I would love to go back out there again. I just may drive this time.
Me too. I do wanna
Take a
go. We
road
keep
trip.
kinda talking about this, but I do wanna go to Wisconsin.
Yes, it was really nice. It was cold whenever we went because it was
Yeah.
in November, and I do not like being cold.
They get a lot of snow. Okay, so then how do you know who you can trust?
You know what? I'm real bad because I love everybody, and I am very trustworthy. But if I get into a room and I get a bad vibe about somebody, then I think that, I would just kind of stay away or whatever from that
Mm,
person. But that's a good question, so because I'm real bad. Sometimes I am vulnerable and can think that I can trust somebody, and then that trust turns away,
yeah,
and then it actually like people stab you in the back, that you really thought that you trusted. Well, then you have to take them out of your circle.
yeah.
And God usually does that. I say usually, I
Mm,
should
mhm,
say
mhm.
he does do that. He takes people out of your circle that does not need to be in there. So I don't know if that answers your question
It
fully,
does.
but people.
Do you feel like we fight that when God's, like, removing someone and we're like,
If it's somebody that I really, really thought that was like one of my person that could be
yeah,
in my inner circle, I probably would. But then again, I know that he's the Almighty and I should not fight him, so I would just steer away.
He has like 20/20 vision, y'all.
I know.
Clarifying that.
I
I know we like that. Well, we think sometimes that we know better,
I
and
know.
yeah,
Hindsight is 2020.
it is.
Sometimes it's just like, okay, God, I know what you're saying, but let me just try again. Maybe she'll be or he'll be different. Let me just
Yes.
try
Yeah.
again. And then they do something similar or whatever and break
Yeah.
that trust. And it's like, I'm sorry, God, I know you were right.
I think it's kinda like plans too when we keep trying to fit the what is the phrase? The square peg into the round hole, and it
Yeah,
just it just doesn't work,
it doesn't fit.
and we just keep trying to jam it in there, and it's like,
Mm-hmm.
"No, it's not gonna work."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Interesting. Um, okay, so share a little bit about Few, because obviously we have a Atlanta chapter, but specifically if there are ladies only, so sorry, Logan, you cannot be in Few.
You can
It's
be a
upset.
speaker, a guest speaker.
Yo, that's true. You could
Hmm.
be a speaker. All right, we're
That
gonna
would be
talk
amazing.
about that. But it's essentially women
Yes.
leaders, and by that, I mean we've got retirees that have led
Hmm.
for years and now they're retired. We have women in the medical space. We have women in finance, educators, business owners, and community leaders.
Yes, it's really any woman. I mean, obviously with the mind of like-minded women, faith women, because we're building God's kingdom, through leadership and through few, we empower women in their faith, family, and their businesses. And we all do it with God's grace. I mean, He's the one that helps
Yeah,
us to do that. And providing, like you said, we were at the leadership program certified last week. Few certified. We also took the Few certified speakers course.
you and I are
What was
double
it?
certified.
Yes, double certified. Well, we should be triple certified because we also did the leadership back.
You're right.
So that's good. Three times the charm, right?
Yes,
So we'll
it's
continue being
true.
certified because they also have a coaching, class too. So in other words, it teaches women how to be not only, continue building your faith through God, but also building your, your leadership skills, your coaching skills, your speaking skills, which
Yes,
I am one of the shyest people. At least I was about 3 years ago.
she ain't no more.
And Buffy, she always talks about how I like to be behind the scenes. Well, I do because I do not like to be in front of the scenes. But now I am, and I will have to say that this is my very first podcast.
And you're doing beautifully.
So, with one of my favorite besties. So, thank you, Whitney. So,
And you're
yes,
gonna be plug on your morning drive
I
with
know.
Logan Lewis as well. So
Next.
everyone
Yes.
listen to both.
So that's why I'm gonna be probably wearing the same outfit. So
That's okay. They won't know. Different day.
but anyway, so, yes, so we empower women and being and also obviously publishing.
Yes.
There's Few Publishing, and that's who published this book. Buffy has her book called. There's several of our
Oh,
Few
that's
women
right. Yeah.
that have been an author. Kimberly Joy herself has books out.
Mhm.
Nancy, her book's out, and it's just it's just amazing. I love being around these women, and we do hold in-person meetings for our Atlanta chapter at the Paulding Chamber on the third Friday of each month from 8:30 to 10 a.m. So we would love any woman that is out there who needs people, women like-minded women to come because you can come in and I'll give you a big old hug. Just come on
Yes,
in.
she will.
Um, Definitely. So
So we're on Paulding County side, so think
yes.
like Eckworth, Dallas,
Hmm.
Hiram, that area. Our side is Atlanta dot the few women dot
It is atlanta.thefewwomen.com.
okay.
Yes.
And then we've literally just launched East Metro Atlanta, which is Courtney
So we will
Robinson.
plug Courtney Robinson because
Yeah.
Courtney, she was one of our members from the inception of Few Atlanta.
Yes.
And now she's launching her own chapter and she will have, that side, which is cab and some of the areas
It's
out
like Alpharetta.
there.
Yeah.
So, and that's exciting because Few's growing and it is
Yes.
because women, we complete each other. We do not compete against each other. That's one of my favorite things that Kimberly taught us way back when, and I use that all the time because it's true.
I love it.
Because we love completing. our women.
Yeah.
We
So
do
just
not compete.
I mean, search the Fellowship of Extraordinary Women,
Yes.
both of those because essentially east side or west side of Atlanta, we got you covered at
Mhm.
this point, so
And the main, website is thefewwomen.com, so to learn more about Kimberly and how it started.
alright, I have 2 final questions for you.
Oh,
One's really easy, so I'll
okay.
ask it
Let me take
first.
some water.
Just as you're thinking, Julie, if they wanna
Mhm.
get a copy of the book, if they wanna connect with you, what's the best way for listeners
Oh,
and
sure.
viewers to find you?
Um, I can give my email address, which my personal, it's julie.bohata, Bohata, at yahoo.com. That's just a personal email. And yeah, that's all I have right now.
Perfect. I love it. You're active on LinkedIn
And
as
LinkedIn too.
well.
Please reach
Yeah,
out to me on LinkedIn. Currently, I do not have a personal Facebook page, but Logan will probably help me get that
yeah.
up and running.
But I love the content
Um,
you're sharing on LinkedIn.
Thank you. Definitely, I would love to have more followers out there. I try to post every day about
Yeah,
leadership and
you do a great
things
job.
like that.
Alright. My last question is difficult. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it.
Okay.
So you know the name of the podcast, If I Ever Live to Be. So often I will give the example of because it's really oxymoron in
Mhm.
most cases. It's usually something that I take away from the show, like something that I want to be. So I often give the example of brave, which interestingly enough, I think was the answer that Matt and Buffy gave. And I love that because I feel like it's a great example because brave is not a destination. Like brave, you have to make the decision every single day that you're going to be brave and
Mm,
bold and take up your space in the world. Go after your passion. Say yes to
mhm.
the path God's leading you on. That takes bravery. What does Julie want to be known for?
Huh.
What does Julie want to live to be?
Well, whenever we had our leadership course last
Yes.
week,
Oh, yes.
should I bring that up?
Yes, please do.
Okay, so I was fighting with God because we were asked to bring up our true identities in Christ.
Yeah.
So I prayed and prayed. We were all asked to pray. So all of our women were praying. Well, the word came into my head and I'm like, no. And I literally was like, no, that's not me. So I kept writing down some other things. But then this word kept coming up. And I'm like, God, no, and it was 10 minutes. And I kept
Yeah,
saying,
we sat there with it for a while.
I
And that,
know.
yeah.
And you don't think that's a long time.
Yes.
Think 10 minutes is a short time. It was a
Yeah.
long time I
Yeah.
was contemplating and kind of arguing back and forth. I wrote the word down that he said and I looked at it and I thought, oh, okay, God, I think I see where you're going. So the word is lifesaver. So I thought once he first put it into my brain of you're going to be a lifesaver, I thought, but you're the one that saves lives.
Mhm. Mhm.
I
Mhm.
can't save lives. I don't. I mean, how am I supposed to do that? And then he kept bringing it back after I kept saying no. He's like, no, way that you can be a lifesaver is that you can be a lifeline for women, other women.
Mm.
You know, there's so many women out there who are alone, who feel alone. I can be compassionate. I can listen to them. Maybe somebody is contemplating suicide like I did way back
Yeah.
whenever I was 18. That is a lifesaver. I would listen to them. Now, granted, I'm not a therapist. I cannot tell you what you can and can't do, but I can give you that type of
It's your story.
advice.
Mhm.
And that is what God was saying. You can be a lifesaver by being compassionate towards people who may have gone through the same situation that you went through, who may not have hope. You
Yeah.
can tell them about Christ. Show them if they don't, know about Christ already, obviously, or if they know about Christ and are having a hard time, dealing with something that they think, that they're, can't deal with it, then I could maybe be that
Yeah.
lifeline or lifesaver to them. So I think that's what I would like to be
I
known
love
for.
that. When I love how Kimberly Joy encouraged you to look at it as God calls us because we're made in his image.
Yes.
And she made the connection of like, well, of course, he named you after him.
Uh,
So she brought it back home to, yes, he is the lifesaver,
yes.
but you are his representative on this earth. And so that's what we're charged with. We're
Mhm.
charged to tell others about him. And our job is really only that seed. Like we're not the one who makes the plant grow. He's the water and the soul and works it all out. We're to plant that seed. And I think,
Exactly. So I loved that. And for me to fight with him for those 10 minutes
Yeah.
Why fight? Just do it.
Yeah. When I feel like, you already are. He just put a name to it because you were that in my life too.
Thank you.
Um, we met when my life was pretty much turned upside down and everything was changing. And I 100%, know that he made our paths cross. So,
Yeah, you were in a season back
mm.
then that was very, very tough. So, yeah, you're my partner in crime, girl.
Thelma and Louise with a happy ending. We
We're
always,
not jumping off. We may jump from here to there, but not
all
off.
right. We'll jump from one side of the mountain to the other. Okay, I'll tell that quick story and then we'll go. We had a that was with Never Alone Foundation, right? So yeah, definitely, which is another fabulous
Yes.
organization. Of course I've had Stephanie on my podcast. Logan's had Stephanie on his, just amazing woman story, and another awesome organization. Founded here, and over in the Paulding County area, but she was doing a fundraiser, and it was around Halloween. It was like a murder mystery dinner type thing, which was so fun. But we dressed up like, of course, it's Halloween, so you're wearing a costume. And Julie and I went as Thelma and Louise, so that was a blast. Maybe if you're all nice, we'll share pictures.
Yes.
Because we have evidence.
Just let us know.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank you, honey. I appreciate your time.
Yeah, this was wonderful.